Make sure I'm on mute there, Rafe. Hey,
Yeah, there you go.
Golden era right there. Welcome everybody. This is a final session for the Night Spider animation challenge that we. Whoops. Right there. Welcome everybody. Sorry, I'm just getting a back feed there from my feed. Again, let's start. Rafe, welcome. Final review session for the Night Spider animation challenge that we recently had. Some amazing entries that were submitted. You know, really surprised by the overall quality of some of the animations, as I'm sure you were as well. I'm not really an animator, but you know, some of them made me laugh, and there was some really good styles that happened, you know, with some of the entries. So really curious to sort of get your feedback and your general thoughts on what the final winners were. And yeah, I'm sure people that submitted are looking forward to getting your feedback as well, because I know that first session was absolute gold, mate, and you did a great job on giving some good feedback. So I'm going to hand it over to you. You're going to you're going to share your screen. You're going to go through those final entries and talk about, you know, I guess the things that you liked and what stood out with those entries. So over to you, mate.
Cool, perfect, awesome. Thank you for the intro. I'm just going to initiate the screen share over here. Make sure we've got the right one. So we're looking at the sync sketch. So I think we're good to go here. Awesome. Right, like Alan was saying, the competition was real fun. I had a blast going through the entries, and I love just the variety of ideas that people were putting through. I feel like these challenges were, you know, you're just focusing on the one aspect, you know, just the animation really allows you to just like be creative and do whatever you feel like doing and have fun doing it, which is always fun with these kind of entries. You know, we can leave aside, say, modeling, lighting, all that sort of stuff. We're animators. Let's just do fun stuff. And it really shows through in the entries because people are putting some pretty creative ideas through. Cool. So just to give an overview of what I plan to do here, I've chosen 5 entries from the advanced section portion of the competition and quite a few from the beginner poses section of the competition. I didn't choose all the finalists that I chose as the winners. I got a good mix of entries so that we can just have fun just reviewing through them, and we can showcase some other entries that we didn't review earlier in the process. Cool. So we'll go for about I guess like an hour and some change. And it's gonna be fun. So hopefully everybody's tuning in, and we'll kick it off. Alrighty. So this is the first entry. Apologies for any mispronunciations of the names, but this is entry 1 by Ngi Duong, as was the name written on the entry page. So we'll watch it, and then I'm hoping we'll do sort of quick fire today, and just kind of, because it's the final version of these entries, I kind of want to take a look at them and just be like, these are the key things that I will change before putting this into my show reel, essentially. So let's dig into it. So this entry was one of the finalists, and I really enjoyed this entry. Probably one of my favorite ones in terms of just the timing of the entire animation. Just the pacing of it is really fun. And what's well executed about the entry in general for the timing, I mean, is that there's a good variety and really good rhythm to the way it's all executed. So you can see like the character comes into the screen and very quickly he's bouncing all over. So there's a lot of energy to the animation, but very soon after that he settles down, and we get this moment here just to have a bit of a breather. And then immediately after, you know, he bounces up to the top and it's full energy again. When you're looking at timing in a shot, like in a single shot context like this, it's really important to keep in mind that you don't want to be, you know, full on the entire time, and you also don't want to be too slow paced because that'll become boring. And you know, finding the right balance and the right mixture of both, like when you want to showcase energy, is the goal that we try to accomplish across our work. This for me was a really good entry for just like giving us really fun energy, but also giving us the proper rhythm so that we've got time to breathe and then appreciate those really cool moments. if I was going to critique this piece, the one thing that I'd love to see a bit more of is just mostly just a little breakup in the posing. There's nothing particularly wrong about the set of poses that we're hitting throughout the shot. I just often find that they are quite symmetrical. This is a prime example here. You know, it's like straight up and down the middle, and then each of the arms coming across to both sides. Not only that, but we have all the arms practically aligned, like symmetrically throughout the shot as well in terms of height. This is like technically there's nothing particularly wrong about this pose, and like it reads nicely and we understand the situation. You know, the character's grabbing onto the sides of the jar and he's like exasperated and such. But I just think breaking up the posing a little bit just to make things a little more interesting visually could make this piece a little bit stronger. What that might look like if we just kind of sketch to the side over here, it could be essentially a number of things, but the main thing I'd be looking to do is break up the symmetry in the arms. Maybe we could throw the spider knight off to one side, for example, and then just vary up with the arms are touching the jar. I think this would have been a nice place to play with the depth of the fact that he's inside a jar. He could have, you know, one arm over here that's foreshortened because it's coming towards the front end of the jar, and maybe the other arm is pushing off into the depth and hitting the back end of the jar. Then we could have a couple of arms that are, you know, a bit closer to each other, and then one off heading towards the bottom. The whole goal here is just to create a bit of asymmetry in the posing and just make the individual frame here a little bit more interesting. And that breakup in the posing just leads nicely into our animation. Like the idea that we often keep in mind is that we want to be able to freeze at any frame in our animation, and that it tells a bit of the story and it's exciting and it's fun to look at. You have to think of your animation in stills as like poses inside of a comic book, you know. An artist will always try to find the most interesting way to interpret an action taking place or a scene taking place. In this case, a little more breakup in the arms and maybe making the character look a little more frantic and directing that energy up towards the top of the jar could have made this piece a little bit stronger. It's really my only critique for this, because everything else, like the animation, the execution of it, is super, super nice. But I found throughout when I was watching it a few times that, you know, over here we have fairly symmetrical posing. He turns around and again we have all the arms in line matching posing, where we could easily be breaking up the posing, but just trying a few different things, you know, maybe holding one arm a little more backwards, having one arm just relaxing towards the bottom, maybe another one going towards the back of the jar, as he's still, you know, maintaining some sense of wanting to be grounded in this strange environment that he's in. This will be easily done there. So it's just the idea. Again, we're up here, and I found that if I pause a few times, we just have that symmetry taking place again. And just to be clear, there's nothing particular wrong with symmetry, and it can be a very nice tool to use if you're intentionally trying to be symmetrical. In this case, I think we could have broken up the posing in a few sections. The same idea that I was talking about, the rhythm of the timing, I think breaking up the posing just creates a little more interesting visual elements for us to look at. Same over here, like it's beautiful. I love the timing. I just wish we could have pushed for a little more creativity in the posing. Maybe we have, you know, the head of the spider pushed off to one side, and it's not deadpan down the middle, with its belly sticking out like this, for example. Let me just get a quickly bit of different color for the jar, assuming that's our jar there. I would have tried to have, say, one arm hanging out over here. Maybe you have an arm that managed to sneak through and it's hanging out outside now. You really want to make him look like he's completely stuck in this moment. And also, like, you know, some uneven posing in this section would have created a sense of, you know, he's not in control and he's clearly, you know, found himself stuck at the top of this jar. Although it's pretty funny the way you played it, that, you know, it's just his belly essentially that got him stuck to the jar. But I think I would have broken up the posing with the arms and legs and tried to create something a little more visually interesting. It's really minor critique though, so really nice work. I like everything else about the shot, and it's a very fun idea. And I love the hand coming in towards the end, just like it's a beautiful, bookend to just say like, close the shot and move on to the next one. So really, really cool stuff there. Alrighty, entry number 2. So this is an entry by Lucian. Apologies for any mispronunciations of the names. So this was a really fun entry. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was one of the few, or maybe the only one, where the character was coming out of a toaster like this. So I love a nice, like, fun, creative idea. Off the bat, one of the things I liked about this entry was what you often find when you're doing like a single shot of animation like this is that people sort of, throw a character into sort of the midground of the shot and maintain the character there the entire time. Where there are some entries like this one, for example, that really play with the depth of the shot, and it just adds a lot more. It just makes it feel quite a bit more real because you understand that he's existing inside of 3D space. So really pushing that toaster backwards and having him land in the foreground, it feels really nice and creates like different planes for us to be interested in, and gives a good sense of depth to the just to the whole shot. So this entry was really interesting to me because, as we reviewed with the previous one, what I like most about this one is really the posing. It's one of the entries that really did a great job of, like, as I was freeze framing throughout the shot, there were quite a few sections where the posing was super nice. Say this, for example, I find, just the breakup in the arms is interesting. The character hunched over like this makes me wonder, like, what the hell is he doing? He clearly looks angry and frustrated. There's a lot of fun stuff taking place. If we kind of freeze frame, say close to the landing over here, this is again very fun. We have, all the arms are just doing something a little bit differently. Some are dragging behind, one leg in the air, one leg hanging out. This for me is creating interesting posing. We have a nice line of action hitting us in this direction. Essentially, as you want to animate, you don't always have to break up everything. It's not the goal. The goal is just to create a sense of, a sense of creativity into the posing, and you want to be able to freeze frame and just look at it and say, cool, this is an interesting visual element, and the individual pose tells us a story. Over here, as I keep pausing, I understand this character is quite angry, he's quite frustrated, there's a lot of tension and motion in his body. If I was to pause here, even without context of the whole shot, I understand that, don't know, maybe he's feeling quite defeated. He's potentially landing from falling down. There's a lot of storytelling going on just in the posing of this character. Review-wise, I think if I was gonna make some tweaks, it'd mostly be to the timing. I found the timing a bit interesting. Like this hang in the air, I think it's cool, and it's fun to push the timing and make it quite a bit more cartoony. Obviously, if he was to jump realistically, gravity would pull him straight back down. But we're animating and we can do essentially whatever we want without timing. So I find that's super cool. I think towards the end there's some odd sort of pauses. I find like this pause over here before he regains his balance and throws the set of glasses down. I find like it detracts a little bit from the energy of the shot. And then also at the end over here, he seems to hit the same pose a couple of times where he's got his hands up, brings him back down. He's got his hands up, brings him back down. And it gives me a sense of like an animation where you copy keys over and use the same animation twice, which is fine. It's a great way to save time. But if you're going to do that, I think if you're going to copy animation from one bit to another, it's always nice to break up the timing a little bit. So maybe the first time he closes his hands is a bit more aggressive. The second time a bit less aggressive because he's relaxing from the fact that he's so upset about the situation. It'll be my main critique. It's like the previous entry we saw, the timing was really fun, where there's a lot of crazy stuff happening and it slowed down. A lot of crazy stuff happening, slowed down. It was cool. Whereas this one, I feel when I watch it, especially this moment, it feels really monotone where he's like open, closed, open, closed. And what you might want to do there will be like open, closed, and you start to break up the timing a little bit, create a little more interesting rhythm. And I feel like that moment wouldn't draw attention so much. Otherwise, everything else is working really well. Even this is interesting. I find a moment like this can be really hard to execute because you might watch it and think, how the hell is he managing to stay in the air for so long? But you're playing it pretty well. My only critique would be maybe not having this pause right at the end of the hold. I think you want to maintain the cartoony moment with the hands, spinning around like whoa, 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 and then once that comes to a stop, he'd come back down to earth. But yeah, really, really nice work, just creating interesting lines, interesting shapes, and keeping the posing very creative. I thought, just like prior to reviewing the entries, I thought the fact that the character gives us all the extra arms would make it, quite a bit more challenging to find, both a little more challenging to find interesting posing, but you also have the extra arms to assist with that. I just feel like all those extra arms can definitely add a bit of challenge to like knowing what to do with them. And I find that this entry does it pretty well because there's, I don't think it's always necessary to break up the posing across all the arms, but just breaking up the posing across, say, the top set and making the bottom set mimic each other doesn't draw our attention to each individual arm and just creates a, interesting posing at the top. I think all of that is working really well, and one of the entries that was quite successful with the posing. Yeah, really cool entry. It was one of my top 5 as well, so nice work, Lucian. Alrighty, next entry. So this is entry number 3 by Florina. This was a fun one as well, a cute little idea. So the spider sleeping, falls out of the bed, has a reaction, and then goes back inside. Really enjoyed the entry, especially the latter part where he crawls underneath like a spider. I think it's one of the few entries where I saw him crawling around on all legs like a spider like that, and it was really fun. Really enjoyed it. If I was going to critique this entry, there's a few moments here and there that kind of draw my attention. Let's start from the top. This moment played really well. I love the way he falls over slowly. I think you want to play with the timing just a little bit more. I think you'd want to drag this timing out just a little bit further, and then we want to make the fall just a little bit quicker because of the fact that he looks like quite a heavy character. I feel like once that torso passes over the edge and there's no going back, he would hit the ground quite quickly. And I've learned over time with experience that when it comes to timing, just shaving a few frames here and there can make a huge difference to the way that a shot feels. You also have to be real careful with arms dragging behind a character like this. It's definitely the right thing to do. The arms will drag behind the body and then drop. But if they're dragging for too long, it can also make the motion feel quite a bit slower. I've learned that especially in VFX, when you get motion blur into things, if we were to see this shot rendered potentially, just those arms falling through after the body but taking quite a bit longer can make the whole motion feel quite a bit slower. In this case, I'll probably shave like 3 or 4 frames out of this action. I think you're doing things perfectly. You just got to tighten out the timing a little bit, so the body would hit here, and then probably a few frames later, you'd want to have most of the arms hitting down. And it'll be a nice place as well to break up some of the timing. So maybe one arm's already hitting there, whereas this one is just coming through there, and the bottom one is coming as well. Maybe one arm can still be hanging on for dear life, but it's not catching, while the other ones are hitting down. So a great place to break up the timing on the arms. It's also a place where you want to break up the posing because it's a moment where he's not really in control of his body. So the way we pose a character can say a lot about the storytelling that we're trying to say and the stories that we're trying to tell. I think in this case, you want him to feel like, you know, he's not in control of his body. He's flabbergasted and he's all surprised because he fell out of his bed. And you can do that nicely with some breakup in the posing. It'd be nice, I think, maybe having a leg sort of drag behind it definitely helps us to read the motion, having those limbs coming through. You just want to make sure that they don't come too late after the body hits, because at this point the body's already made contact with the ground. So essentially all momentum would be dissipated, and he could realistically stop his arms from coming through. So I think if we amplify how quickly he falls and how quickly he loses balance, that moment could be a lot stronger and potentially quite a bit more comical. The other thing that catches my attention here just a little bit is this leg over here. As you can see, it's perfect. It's falling down. It's coming through. And then, there's a moment where it's already gone past the edge of this glove. And as soon as it's gone past it and he's not awake, gravity would essentially take over and that leg would be swinging down quite a bit faster. I think having that leg through, especially through this moment, you can see it's already disconnected from the glove, but it's still sort of hanging out in space and falling down quite slowly. I think having the leg through come quite a bit faster, maybe 4 or 5 frames earlier, and the weight of the leg being the first thing that leads the spider to falling over, will be a nice way for you to play this. So potentially by this point, this leg is already swinging across. Actually, let me do it again. Say swinging across with a bit of momentum. So say the leg falls first, it has momentum, and as it leads, that momentum leads the base of the body to start falling over, and we can let this part of the body drag behind just a little bit more. So these shots, you always really want to think about the physics of it and also the body mechanics taking place. It's a tricky shot, obviously, to act or to get reference for, but you really have to try put yourself into it and really think about it. And technically, you could totally get on side of the couch and act it out a little bit, falling onto just like a mat or something. And it can be real helpful often just to not shoot reference, but act out the action yourself, because it really tells you, okay, sure, my leg was the thing leading the action, and then my hips came through, and then the rest of my body. If you're conscious about what you're doing with your body while acting out some of the reference, it can be super helpful to understand, so you're trying to implement into a moment like this. Obviously, it's not always easy. There's some entries here that we're going to review soon where the character's doing backflips, and I can't do a backflip either. So, but we can find reference for that. In this context, I think just acting it out a little bit could be helpful. And visually, I think it's for one element of the screen to be leading us down, with the other element, staying in place and not being distracting, so that we storytelling wise, we're following the leg, and we see how it leads the body into falling over. Given that it's a big part of this shot, I think really tightening up this moment, getting the mechanics right, could be a way to make this piece quite a bit stronger. Otherwise, this is really fun. I love the defeated posing in the body. Maybe you could break up some of the arms. Mostly just these two, just finding something a little more interesting. Perhaps, this arm kind of coming out towards frame over here, just to break up some of this posing could be nice. But you're doing a great job. I really like, having some of the limbs still hanging onto the base. Well, this is perfect over here. It's beautiful, and it breaks up the timing, the posing nicely. And it's not necessary for every single limb to fall over the floor. I think having one hold on to the glove is a really nice little touch. This defeated look in his face, it's so good. And then one other little note, at this moment here, a little bit strange. I think mostly body mechanics wise, I think he would be using his limbs a little more to get off the ground. Right now he's doing doing a sit-up essentially to get off the ground. And although technically possible, I think it's not quite justified. He's getting up, essentially doing a crunch, and at the same time the feet are sliding, which is not Usually when you're doing a sit-up or a crunch, you have to keep your legs quite solid because it's a counterbalance to your torso. I think this moment, I don't quite know what's going on with him reaching upwards. I think you would benefit from making this a little more believable by, say, having a few of the limbs reaching out towards the glove and using that as leverage, as assistance to get up, and then also having a few of the arms sticking to the ground just to assist with the posture and the effort of getting up. He essentially, I think, would roll over and have quite a bit of the weight on those elbows, on the elbows of the right side of his arm. And I think that would be the way that you'd normally get up. You'd have to use something to assist you to get up off the floor. Again, it's a little moment that if you were to just get on the floor and act it out quickly, you would think, oh, yeah, sure, I used this hand, and then this one was the one reaching, and you can very quickly test it out on yourself and then implement those body mechanics into the animation, and it'll make this little moment so much more believable. Because everything else is working well. The way that he puts a hand down here, takes a foot backwards and crawls underneath, that's perfect. The way he falls over, the mechanics are working. I just want to tweak the timing. But this one moment over here, it just reads a little bit strange. I'll totally just clean up some of the body mechanics here, and then accentuate this reaction. I think this is really fun. I would just, push a few of his limbs. Maybe he's like putting a hand on his head because he's really frustrated with himself, or maybe he's potentially rubbing his eyes because he's still a bit drowsy. He doesn't quite know what's going on, and you can still maintain a few hands on the ground for balance, and that would totally break up a lot of the posing. Having all 6 arms react towards camera like this, although perfectly fine, just reads a little bit odd. Overall, really cool piece. I think it's working super well. I'll just make a few little tweaks here and there to make it a little bit stronger. But mostly I really like the crawl at the end. Nice work on that one. There's not too many people that play the spider like a spider, but it's fun the way he just throws himself back in there and goes back to bed. So yeah, cool entry. Nice work. Alrighty, let's check out another one. So entry number 4 here by Federica. Sounds like a Spanish name. Alrighty, let's have a look at this one. So yeah, it's real fun, like really good variety of entries so far. And I really like just how varied the ideas that people put into the entries is. Like you get quite a few that are acting based, and then quite a few like this that are body mechanics based with a bit of acting, and some entries are purely body mechanics with characters jumping around or whatever. It's been real fun to just see what people come up with. I recall that as a student, I always really enjoyed when I was doing like a little shot, say for a contest or just for work, like really trying to think like what would be a cool idea and trying to execute it. And it's a real fun part of the work that we do. You get to think of a cool moment and a cool idea and execute it. Anyways, enough rambling. So this is a really nice entry. I think it's a nice one for the way that it mixes up some cool body mechanics. With the backflip there and the way that he comes across here, the forward roll, and then some nice acting over here where he's caught and he's like, oh shit, and he's afraid. So it's always nice when you can incorporate both together, and all of that tells a story. It's also another shot that nicely plays with the depth of the scene, where we have the character standing towards the back and coming towards the front. And personally, I'd totally push that even further. Either use like a wider lens on your camera, or just extend how much of a distance he covers over here, so that he's a little smaller in the beginning and a little bigger or closer to camera towards the end. I think that ability to just play with the depth of your scene and your camera, like it can be really exciting, and it can make the whole entry a little more just visually interesting. Obviously, you don't want to do that every single time. You don't want to do that for every single shot. But a shot like this, where we're looking at a character sneaking, I think if he was sneaking towards camera, so that towards the end, he will stay a little bit bigger in frame, and really sneaking, like trying to get past the camera essentially. I think it could work, and it could be quite nice. And considering that this is the key moment where there's some acting taking place and some sort of reaction in his face, it would be nice for this moment to be a little bit closer to camera, a little more in the foreground, so that we can appreciate the reaction. The framing that we have right now, it's all working perfectly fine. But like for example, right now there's a ton of like empty space over here, quite a bit of empty space here, where nothing's taking place. Is not particularly interesting, and we're not really utilizing the space in our framing to accentuate our animation. Essentially, I think a slight camera tweak, you can maintain the motion, but a slight camera tweak can really help out with the storytelling and make the whole shot a little more appealing. And that's one of the principles of animation is just staging. And staging for me is just like layout, like setting up camera and really thinking about what's the best or most dynamic way for me to tell this little story, this little 5 to 10 second shot. What can I do camera wise and staging wise to really make it a lot more interesting? If we think of this as our framing, we could create some nice like lines of depth with the environment you got going on. And then maybe the spider, starts over here, but towards the end of the shot, he really would be quite a bit closer to camera. And, he would really travel this distance in depth. And I think visually it could be quite fun. Just add a bit of drama to the shot as well. I think a fun thing to do, and something that I learned, after I started working more professionally, because I see so many student shots. Although the focus is really the animation, and we're just going to critique the animation today. Eventually, some of these shots you could totally use them in your first showreel to get a job, and I think really pushing to make them like as interesting as possible is the right approach and the right mindset you want to have. A good thing to do is just anytime you see like a cool shot on say a TV show or a movie, it's nice to sort of break down the staging and where they had the characters in frame and how the camera was positioned and how that helped out the animation. If you're applying for a job as an animator, the main thing that's going to be critiqued obviously is your animation, but it definitely doesn't hurt to position things to make the animation a lot stronger. In this case, I think we could tell a lot more of the story and have the character way more in focus and way more, an element that we're really focusing on if it was a little bit closer to us. Otherwise, I think it's all working well. My only critiques for this shot animation-wise would be the backflip and the forward flip. So don't take it too hard. I think a backflip and a forward flip are really some of the most challenging, like body mechanic type shots you can try to accomplish in animation. They're tricky for just about anybody, just to get the physics right. I've tried a few in the past, and it's quite a challenge. You really have to analyze the reference and like take a look at like the movement of like the hips and the legs and the torso and how all of that is working together during a backflip or a forward flip. There's really, as you break it down, there's just so much taking place. The main thing that bothers me here, I think mostly would be just tracking the center of gravity. It's that we're creating a really beautiful arc where we're coming through like this. And then just over here, you can notice the spacing changes, and suddenly we come to a complete stop, like mid-air. So this, essentially is impossible. There is so much weight and so much momentum coming through on this jump, and the character's barely just on his tiptoes. He really hasn't caught himself just yet. But over these couple of frames, actually these three, there's very little movement in his body, and then he drops. That little stutter is really, it's really causing a big like visual, like stutter to that moment, and it'll be a fairly easy thing to rectify. You just want to get in there and make sure you have a really beautiful arc coming through. and you want to make sure your spacing is quite broad, and then it catches towards the end. If you think of that as keys. If you were to think of that as keys on your timeline, there'd be a lot of space and movement between these moments, and then as he catches his weight, we would slow down the spacing as he reaches the bottom. So this moment here, where the keys are very close together and the spacing is very minimal, it's exactly what you want it to happen here. So he would hit there, and maybe this post would be a little bit closer, and then we'll build the spacing as there's more movement taking place throughout the top of the arc. I think the same thing probably applies to the very beginning of this jump. But you can see he's building up all this anticipation. This is perfect. You have to squish down, and you got to push up hard for a backflip like this. It's obviously what is required physically from the character. But then he pushes his legs through. These arms are practically fully stretched. There's a lot of force taking place, and then you can see from frame to frame, the base of that center of gravity has barely shifted, and it's just not realistically what would take place. This character just exerted a lot of force to try and lift himself for that backflip. This moment, after this one, his weight would essentially be over here. I think you'd want to shift quite a bit, and that energy would carry through. He might be a little bit higher throughout this moment, and then as gravity catches and the energy begins to dissipate, all of that would come down, and he would compress, and then he would lean back towards the wall. The funny thing is, a lot of the posing and the ideas taking place are all working correctly. The compression, the way that he pushes through his body, the way the legs kick out, all of that is real nice. You just got to tidy up essentially this mass and get that working correctly. An easy thing to do, which a lot of or a little tip or tip and trick that you can use to approach this, which I've seen some other entries do, is just like creating a sphere and just attaching that sphere to the main root control of this character, and then analyzing the motion just in the sphere. You would hide the character, you would have the sphere mimicking the motion of the character, and you can analyze just your arcs and your curves just in the sphere. And the reason you would do this is just because when you have a character as complex as the spider with a whole bunch of arms, it can be so easy to get distracted by the different limbs and the different parts of the body and all the different mechanics taking place with the arms pushing off and the leg kicking out and such. I think you would do yourself a service to just ignore all the arms and just really look at the body, because this mass over here is really what we're transferring throughout the shot. And if you can get that working correctly, we can adjust the arms and the legs afterwards. Because right now, like I've said, the legs and the arms are all doing the right thing. The only thing missing is this mass moving correctly and responding correctly to the physics of the shot. And just to cut to the chase, the same idea takes place over here. This one definitely works a little bit better, but it feels like there's a bit of a slowdown throughout, say, this moment. As he's coming through, the energy feels good. He could definitely jump a little bit higher and a little bit further, but neither here nor there. It's coming through perfectly fine. But if I'm just tracking this front shoulder, it feels like around here, he just begins to slow down a little bit. And it'll be nice for him to just, fall a little bit harder. And the reason for that is just the fact that he's got quite a solid, thick mass of a torso. It feels like the weight, it makes him feel a little bit light. If the amount of force that he would generate to push off on this forward flip doesn't translate to him catching himself over here. So he's catching and rolling himself nicely. It's this is the technique that you would employ. He could even potentially be on the forearm, although I'm no parkour expert, so I wouldn't know for sure. And the legs are cool. Maybe you can have them dragging back a little bit more just through this moment, because it could be interesting. But again, I think like the limbs for the most part are doing the correct things body mechanics wise. It just feels like this mess of a torso is not moving correctly. I think over here as well, you can see this moment, he'll be pushing off and generating as much force as possible to perform this action. You know, for a big dude, he'd have to jump quite a bit to be able to perform this forward roll. And you can see that he's not stretching quite as far as he could. You know, it took us like 5 frames for him to extend his leg essentially. When I think, you know, you could shave 3 frames of that and really build the anticipation and then let him shoot out almost like he's shooting out of a cannon. Shaving 2 or 3 frames out of that first moment, the outstretch, I think could make this a lot more believable. Also, the way he reads on camera, on this angle at least, it looks a little bit like he shoots upwards and then forwards, arc-wise. So I would just take a look at that arc and make sure, you know, in 3D perspective, you're not cheating anything. And he's performing like a beautiful, nice arc across over here for this roll. But yeah, those are my major critiques, because this first part when it comes out, like, super cool. I love it. It's creative and very spider-like, and the timing, all of it is real nice. And then the body mechanics, once he's walking and once he's upright, I think it's all working pretty well. Like I mentioned in a few other entries, I would break up some of this posing just to make it a little more interesting. I think it's cool the way that he's caught, but just avoiding a little bit of this complete asymmetry could be nice. Maybe you know, having one leg down the middle and one leg a little bit further out. Maybe pushing a few of the hands so that one's a little more foreshortened towards us and one is a little more you know, hitting sort of behind them in depth. Little tricks like this to break up the posing could be nice. But yeah, this is not the major thing I'm focusing on here. I think cleaning up the center of mass of this character throughout those 2 jumps will go such a long way to making it feel way cooler, because just the idea is super cool, and execution wise, like, you pick some really challenging like body mechanic actions to perform, you know, both a backflip and a forward flip, and all of it is performed pretty well. So just a little cleanup on spacing and the arcs throughout this moment will make it feel a little bit better. Otherwise, really cool stuff and nice effort. Cool. And we're going to review one more animation entry before we get to the posing section of the entries. I think if there's any other people listening that afterwards want me to critique their stuff, I'd be super happy to get around to it. For this review session tonight, I just kind of picked out a few that I thought were fun. They gave us quite a few things for us to like look at and review and learn from, and those are the ones that I picked out. But there was no particular reason why I chose one or the other. I thought these would be fun, and I went ahead and picked them. So honestly, any other participants, if I missed you, feel free to reach out to me. We can either just jump on a call and I'll be happy to have a review, or I can send through some drawovers or something. But I'm having a lot of fun reviewing these entries, so I'd be more than happy to review some more. Alrighty, entry number 5 for the advanced animation part of the contest. This is one entry number 5 by Yi. Let's have a look. All right, this one's real cool. Yeah, this was a fun entry. Just, you know, clever idea-wise, like the spider being scared by a bug. Really fun. And then I was wondering how you did the the spider wave as well. Pretty clever. You know, the Spider-Man-like spider wave to try and catch it. Pretty fun. And then the run out of the screen is pretty comical as well. It's cool stuff. Let's see. Yeah, this one's overall working really well. Let's have a look. I think if I was going to critique some stuff, I think some of the posing could be fun for us to edit in some areas and just push it a little bit more. Again, a lot of these entries, they're if they're the final submissions, I think they're all working for the most part really well. And for student work, a lot of them are really solid. If I'm looking at these, I just think if you're a student, the goal is probably to get them into a showreel eventually to apply for a job. And sometimes it's just like it's perfect to enter a contest like this and then set the animation aside and then come back to it like a month later, and you might have some new ideas, some renewed enthusiasm to just keep polishing. And often just you're only a few little tweaks away from making everything cool. But the posing here are really fun. I love some arms hanging out like this, other arms doing something different. I think I would just like to see a little more clarity in the posing. Like if I just freeze frame it, I don't exactly know what this character is doing. So maybe if he's meant to be super just relaxed reading the paper, I guess I would maybe try to address some of the posing to make him feel a little more relaxed. Maybe you could have, say, legs crossed over, and that would break up the posing and symmetry in the legs. This arm over here is perfect. This tells me that the character is super relaxed. I like it. Maybe we could have the coffee cup, hanging off to the side, just so that it's not lost in the silhouette of this chair. If you just think about the silhouette, so this will be the chair, and this is the side of the chair that we see. So it'll be nice if you could see, the coffee cup, the silhouette of a hand, and then that's lost in the silhouette of the chair. It's a little detail, but if you really think about the silhouette of each single pose, like key pose that you create throughout your shot, just putting the coffee cup and a hand out to the side can just break up the silhouette a little bit, and that can be quite a bit maybe easier to read, a little bit nicer, a little more like distinct, immediately distinct, because it's easy to understand that he's holding a coffee mug when I pay attention to this hand over here. But at a glance, sort of this gray blends into the gray of the chair, and it's easy to miss at a glance that he's holding onto a coffee cup. So I think holding it off to the side, maybe being able to see the handle, little details like this can go a long way in helping us to tell a specific story about this character. I would just think about, what do I do when I'm sitting on the couch at home being lazy, and then and trying to incorporate some of that into the posing. There's nothing particularly wrong here. I just think we could make it a little more interesting. Maybe he might have his his legs up on the chair, and that makes him feel maybe a little more cool, a little more like teenage-like, and he's he's really relaxed, reading his homework or whatever. I think it's important just to think about, what am I trying to tell? What do I want people to think about this character? And at a glance, if I'm to stop and pause myself in this one frame, what does it say about the character? What's the story I'm trying to tell? It's really important for us as animators to really keep that in mind at all times. It sounds exhausting, but it's really not. Like when you're first setting up your shot, you just think, what is it that we're trying to tell? Little tweaks like this can make this little moment a little more readable at a glance. Otherwise, everything else is working so well. I think, the fact that he looks over at the bug and has a moment to register that before he jumps up in the air or scared and crazy like is perfect. This is a perfect moment for us to play with some of the posing and break it up a little bit. I would maybe have just the two bottom arms grabbing onto the chair. I would think maybe in this moment he might want to grab onto something and sort of feel grounded because he's a bit afraid of the situation. So grabbing onto the chair can be an easy way for us to break up some of this posing. So I think overall the timing and stuff is all working super nicely. I would just I will look at some of the areas where you can change up some of the posing and make it more interesting. See, this is more fun. This tells me so much more about the character. If I just this moment tells me way more about the character than this of it than this one here. over here, I just see a character with all his hands up in the air saying, "Hey, little bug, coming out with me." Over here, I see the character, hands over his face. He's fully like afraid. He doesn't want to see what's in front of him. Unfortunately, like I know what's happening because I've seen the animation, but I think these arms are a little bit lost in the silhouette of the character. So I think the bottom arms could potentially just be a little bit further out of the silhouette. It'll give us a little more clarity in terms of this being the point where he's shooting his web from. And also it helps in breaking up the posing. Everything else is working quite nicely. This hand's still grabbing onto the chair. I think this it's subtle, but the posing of this hand feels like it's resting on the armrest, and it just feels a little relaxed. Having the arm come down and say grab along the bottom, it's a really minor detail, but it tells me way more about the character. If you're on a chair and you're grabbing onto it from the bottom of the armrest, it says something, and it tells me you're frantic and you're grabbing onto something, and there's tension in the scene. Those are all the little details that we look at work when we're working on films and we're being creative, and we're telling something about this character, but as part of a grander sequence taking place. I imagine if this was a shot in a film that I'm working on, and we have a character that's really afraid of this bug, we would really put ourselves in those shoes and really try to think about what do people do when they freak out. And when people freak out and they jump onto like the kitchen bench or something, they're really grabbing onto stuff because they don't want to fall over, and they don't want to be anywhere near the ground. And it really comes down to minor details. Like, this is not a very big posing change from what you currently have, but in this moment where he's covering his eyes, he wouldn't also have, a couple of hands relaxing and just hanging off to the side, not really doing anything. I think we can accentuate the way people perceive this moment just by the way that we push some of the action. The same is true for the legs. Say this, I find if you were to have this leg on its tiptoes, it's again a really small change, but it will tell me that if you're on your tiptoes, it means that you're ready to like spring into action. You're ready to like ready to jump and run away, show the situation get any worse. So whenever you finish an animation, look for little areas where you can accentuate the storytelling and really push through the ideas that you want to tell. And then all of this part is real fun. One thing to be careful, I'll just be careful about the body mechanics. If I sort of freeze frame throughout this, you can really feel this torso, shooting up really quickly, but without it being quite justified by the legs. The reason being, at the same time the torso is shooting up, you can see this leg sliding, which wouldn't be the case. What would actually be the case would be potentially you have this leg over here, and then say on a tiptoe, and then at that moment that leg would really press down onto its heel, and he would initiate a jump before the leg peels off. So I love the fact that he's scared and he jumps up and stuff, and it's super cool. It's working well. You just want to be able to justify this body mechanics. Again, I'd just get on a couch and I'd put the camera like on my phone off to the side, and I'd just act it out jumping off. And if you were just to look at that reference, analyze it, and just think about purely the body mechanics, it would be really helpful and make the scene a lot more believable. Again, like since the animation is done, for the most part, it's very subtle. But tidying up the body mechanics here makes it feel so much more believable. If you were to act this out, it's very unlikely that your hips will shoot up with your legs also sliding. Reason being, it's practically impossible to do that. So I'm a huge proponent for just shooting reference. And even at work, sometimes I get lazy and I'm like, I can animate this. I know the way it works, and then you animate it and like it just looks pretty shit, and you don't know why. And you shoot some reference, and you're like, oh, of course, like it's the legs push to drive the hips forward. Now it makes perfect sense, and you're like, duh, that's the body mechanics coming into play. So I think a little helpful tip would just be like, once you're happy and you say you're finished with the animation, just look at it and just act it out once more. Act out what you've already animated, and then take a second past analyzing your body mechanics personally. Have a look at your hips and be like, all right, when I jumped off the couch, it was actually my legs driving through first before my hips came through afterwards, and that was what made my arms drive forward for momentum. So on and so forth. It can be a little practice, but you could take a break from this animation. It's submitted, it's done, it looks cool, and then come back to it, shoot reference of it, and you might pick up on little details that can help to tell the story. Otherwise, it's so fun, and I love the comical exit of the character. Kind of like a similar note I said earlier. I think it's pretty subtle, but framing wise, there's no reason for us to really be showing so much empty space at the top and bottom. If I was in Maya, I'd get my camera and I'd just take it in a little bit closer, so that framing wise, we would end up here. And you'd have this character, sitting closer to us, so we can appreciate the animation way more. And you're following the rule of thirds, where you have interesting action taking place here, interesting action taking place there, and we will lose all of this empty space at the top and the bottom. It's, again, little note. It's not really relevant to the animation, and for the contest, when I was judging, I was really looking at an execution of animation, or the principles of animation, and so on. Now that the entries are done, I feel like, if you're going to slap that on your show reel, like, just bring the camera in and showcase, the cool animation that you did. You put a lot of effort into this. It looks cool. You want to hopefully get a job at some point. Like, you want to showcase what you've done. So, get the camera in there and show us all the little details of the stuff that you've done. When I see your show reel, I don't want to see this empty space. I want to see all of this fun stuff over here. This is cool stuff. Cool. Otherwise, I love it. Nice entry, and another one of the more unique ones. It's really fun. People really like showcase the variety of different ideas for the entries, and it's been fun. I think being able to exercise your creativity is like such a fun part of like the job that we do. So why not exercise it as much as possible, I say. Alrighty. So let's get into the poses. So I picked out, again, like 4 people, I think. And I took like 3 poses from each one, and I thought I'd just quickly look at them and be like, what's like the one thing I would tweak from this, For the most part, all of them were super cool. There's a good variety of stuff, and people were doing really, really interesting stuff with the posing. What's the main thing we're looking for in posing? The main thing I'd say would just be storytelling. There's a reason why this character is doing this thing. There's a reason why this character is, angry and pointing somewhere. There's a reason why this character looks defeated. There's a reason why you chose to do that posing. You were trying to say something about this character, the world that he lives in, and the reason he was performing this action. I think this is perfect. It's a really perfect idea for a contest for beginners, because even at a basic level, posing is so fundamental to the work that we do. Any shot that I do at work begins like this. I lay down a few keys and I pose my character in one place, and then I pose him later on, and slowly you begin to unfold your animation. But the fundamentals never change. Like, I do this on a daily basis. I have to set up my poses, and I have to critique my work, and I have to say the reason I chose to do my pose like this and to tell this story is because of X, So really, really nicely done. This entry. This one, it's great. It's cool. I like a lot of the stuff happening. I find this is really fun, just breaking up some of the symmetry in the fingers, like having 2 together, 1 separate. You see it all the time in like comic books, and it's a lot more interesting to see this. This looks like a flat hand. And although it's fine, it looks to me like the default hand when you first open up a scene in a character, and you don't often want to have, it's called the paddle hand. And you don't often want to have your character doing the paddle hand. I find every other hand in the shot, even if you can't really see them, a little more interesting. Over here, he seems to have 1 finger up and the other bent with the thumb hanging out. These are grabbing onto the umbrella. All of these are more interesting. So I think this little corporate over here, I would probably tweak that and just find something a little more interesting. I think it's fine that it's like, dragging through, but it feels like the thumb's on the wrong side as well. But anyways, I would just have like one finger there, and then maybe one finger sort of bent but getting lost in the background, and that'll be the hand, and then you have the thumb sticking out. Again, like a lot of this I'm saying, it's subtle stuff, but it goes a long way into just making a character feel a little more interesting. Not the greatest drawing, but you get the idea. Yeah. So people in general, no pedal hands. We generally don't want to see pedal hands. Otherwise, this is cool. I like everything going on here. I like the fact that the head's kind of tilted this way, and it's not really following the line of action. I think if it's intentional, I think it's working well. You have the body nicely, pushed in this arc, and you can play it both ways. You can totally have the head, going backwards, and you make a really dynamic line of action where there's a lot of action taking place, or you bend the head inwards like this, and it brings a little more sense of balance to the shot. And it's just a matter of choice. If I was pulling the head backwards, I would think, he's in the middle of an action, so you call like the action moment, and the head forward like this makes me think that he just swung like a golf ball, and now he's in control and admiring the shot. So cool stuff. One other little note for this one, I would just be careful with this arm over here. It's really lost inside the silhouette of the body. I would just pull it out a little bit more, just a touch, like not necessarily enough to see the arm, the hand, sorry, but enough that we get a little bit of negative space between the body and the arm, and it's just like that much easier for us to immediately read what's taking place. It's really minor details. So that negative space note, I think, applies over here. These two hands immediately catch my attention. You don't have to have every single hand or arm or limb sticking out of the greater silhouette of the body, but these two arms over here both get a little bit lost inside the silhouette. So I think this could have been a fun place to maybe keep the arm over here, but maybe this one at the top, just doing something a little bit differently. And much like the other hand, could make just for a slightly more interesting pose for us to read. So I think this one on top is really the main culprit, and this hand over here obstructing us from seeing the character's face to some extent. I don't think it's completely necessary, so it'll be a minor tweak that I will make just to make this pose, this pose in general, just a little bit stronger. Otherwise, everything's working pretty well. The only other area that it instantly draws my attention for like just a bit of confusion is just what's taking place down here, like putting this hand like directly behind the foot just reads a little strange. Biggest reason being that we have this foot over here, and the posing of the foot is nice, but then you have this arm coming through there, and the arm feeds directly into the foot. So it almost reads like this could be the leg and this could be the leg. So clearly we can see that the foreground element is the leg. But if I was to think about just the silhouette of this shot here, it would look like this. And if I take a look at that as a silhouette, I'm like not really sure which of these would be a leg. So it's yeah, I would definitely find a way to have this limb and this leg just separated from each other, just create a little bit of separation, a bit of negative space between them, and it'll be much easier to read for what they are. Otherwise, it's cool. The rest of the pose, I like it. Really nice and action-packed. Yeah, this is a cool pose. This tells me so much story-wise. It just looks like a badass character. He's about to deliver like a cool line of dialogue in a movie, something like that. I think the one thing catching me off I love it. This is real fun. It's like the instant reaction. The first thing that comes to mind. He looks a little bit up and down through the middle. Like this arm is leading our attention this way. I think I would have committed to the character, standing over his left leg, and that would just shift the body a little bit to that side. I think this leg is fine to be sticking out, but I think having the center of gravity, balancing over the one leg, and just leading all our attention towards one side, it just creates a slightly more interesting posing. Essentially creating a little bit of imbalance. He's clearly not symmetrical, like the arms on either side are not matching. And there's some nice, interesting symmetry created, but one, the umbrella here, but the arm leading the opposite way. The main thing I would do is I would just take the center of gravity, shift it over one leg, create a nicer arc throughout the body with this leg leading the arc and it going through the torso like this. And I feel like it'll interesting. It would instantly become a little more interesting. Sorry, I hope I didn't mute myself. No, we're good. Sorry, I'm just gonna have a drink of water. But yeah, cool stuff. It really, I think, honestly, you take that center of gravity across and instantly becomes a lot cooler. Sorry, and also these were 3 poses by Margot, just to shout out the names as well. Cool. So this is Melanie's poses. We've got 3 from her as well. These are all working pretty well. They're all really fun. The 3 of them, I think, really strong in storytelling. This character clearly angry and shouting towards somebody about to start a fight. This, the classic superhero pose, and this, a very defeated-looking character. I think they're all working really well. Maybe this one, the first thing that catches my attention would be I want it to be just a touch more dynamic. There are so many limbs here, and all of them have some sort of bend to them. They're all bent, and not a single one of them is straight. I think I love the way this leg is bent. I would keep that, and it's beautiful right underneath the body. You might want to shift the body a little bit just to have the weight being held by that leg. But then I think this one would look so cool if it was just like straightened out a little bit more. And the same thing for the arms, maybe having this arm be a bit straighter, or this one over here hitting straight towards the ground. There's something about the arms and every single limb essentially being bent that detracts from some of the strength of the pose. Potentially, this arm at the back over here could be one that's a little straighter. Just there's a sense of energy to a really stretched out limb, because that requires the fact that you're intentionally stretching out an arm. Something about it would make it feel more intentional and a lot stronger. And I think we're losing a little bit of the energy just by bending every single limb. And posing wise, it'd be fun for some of the limbs to be a little more bent and some of them to be a little more outstretched. I think it'll give us a little more energy to the shots. But yeah, otherwise these are working so well. This one's perfect, like I look at it and the character feels so defeated. And the little tweaks that I would make would be so minimal. Honestly, the things dragging me towards it, I feel like this wrist over here, it's super subtle, but it looks a little bit broken. Like it'd be hard to rotate your wrist inwards that much. You generally rotate your wrist in and out, but not side to side so much, and it looks a little bit broken. Maybe same with this one, and it just strikes my attention. Maybe he's in pain because of the fact that his wrist is so rotated, but I highly doubt that's the case. I would just make that little tweak. And then potentially, I think it could be nicer seeing his torso there if we really commit to like a line of action like this and have the character really facing downwards. He's really down on the dumps, and then those arms are just coming up towards his face there. It'll be subtle, but something about him being just a little bit upright feels like there's still some intentional sort of energy in his body. And I think you bend the head down and make him look really defeated. Like essentially, you want to think that he's just fully sagging into this pose because he's so sad and depressed, and bad things have happened to him. So I would try and really think about where can I make the character feel a little more defeated, and incorporate that into the pose. Otherwise, it's cool. Nice stuff. Cool. We've got a few here from Mohammed. These are all pretty cool. Another very cool defeated pose. Like it's a fun one to do, because you're essentially pushing, the emotion of sadness to an extreme, and you can there's a lot of room for exploration there. Let's take a look at this one. Working pretty well overall. The only critique would be, symmetry across the limbs. This limb over here is mimicking this limb. This one is mimicking this one. The legs look like they're doing the same thing for the most part, and so are the upper arms. I think I would, with a character like this, you will look to vary the posing between the different limbs. So this is totally fine for this hand to be on his face, but maybe this one would be, just sagging down with an open hand, just looking really defeated. Like you don't want to see any energy in that body. You just want the hand to drop down. He's completely defeated. Something's not going well in his life, and that would make it read a little more like sadness. You also have to be careful with the 2 feet. Like both of them are getting foreshortened as you have them pulling away from camera, and they both read like little stumps. So I think pushing a leg out to the side like this, and then showing us a little bit more of the silhouette of the foot, even a little bit, it's enough for us to read that as more of a leg. Sorry, I should use a different color that's more clear. Let's use yellow. Yeah, I feel like this and the character putting weight on his tiptoes reads as more of a leg than a stump like this. So be careful whenever you're foreshortening limbs. Make sure that they still read as the limb that they're supposed to be. Foreshortening is usually really intentional, and it can be really cool. It can create a very dynamic pose. If you have a hand really like a Superman pose with a hand coming close to camera, and then a hand a bit smaller in the background. So foreshortening can be really cool, and really help to tell stories and create dynamic posing. Let's say if I was doing my Superman pose, I wouldn't foreshorten the forearm directly behind the hand, directly behind the arm, and then I wouldn't put the body behind the hand like this, obstructing everything. I would make sure that there's some clarity in the body. So make sure that you maintain some clarity to what those limbs are, so that we can clearly see what the posing is meant to be. Otherwise, it's cool. It's working well. And I think the same thing applies. See, this one's a much nicer. I guess symmetry still taking place. We're still quite symmetrical across the limbs, and same over here. We're still quite symmetrical across the limbs. With a character like this with multiple arms, it's perfect for us to like utilize that to our advantage. So I think he could have, hooked one arm through, and maybe he's got another arm a little bit further back that's charging out for the next punch, and then another one that's a little more relaxed. And he's got one arm over here that's guarding his face, and then you can have another arm sort of guarding his body, and another arm guarding his chest. Just little details, but just breaking up the posing makes it more interesting, and it also tells us more of the story of the character. I think it would be fun for us to imagine how this character will fight. And personally, I think it would be awesome if he was like, punching with one arm, blocking with another, blocking to the head and body simultaneously, doing things that are limiting to a human with 2 arms, but a character with 6 arms can totally perform. In this case, it would have been cool for him to have thrown a punch, and he's already got the next punch coming through, and another one's maybe blocking or gauging distance. He could have an open hand towards the character. Cool little details like this that make me think about how the character would function if he was like a UFC fighter, for example. It's the stuff that we can pay attention to to create more compelling stories and ideas. Cool. And last but not least, we have an entry here from Sophia. So we take a look at her posing. Yeah, these were really cool pseudo poses. I like what's taking place. This is easily my favorite one. We'll get back to this one. And for these two, like, they're working so well. I think my critiques again would be quite minor, and will be a lot of ideas that we've already visited for the past hour. I think you have to watch out for symmetry across the body. Again, you have all three arms reaching out, and all three arms over here are more or less doing the same thing. The feet are much cooler, like there's a nice like little bend of the leg there, and that tells me he's quite joyful. He's almost dancing in the rain. I think this one, because of the stark contrast of the character against the white background, the first thing that catches my eyes is this very even negative space between the arms, and it's purely because of the fact that we have symmetrical posing. It's an easy way for us to know if we're symmetrical, but just looking at all the negative space. An easy way for us to address that would just be to have, say, it would be for us to say, have this arm, a little bit lower, and maybe this middle arm can overlap the front arm or the top arm, and then this is the one at the bottom holding the umbrella. This is quite subtle in the sense that, like, it would be the up arm rotated downwards and the middle arm rotated a little upwards. And inside of my, it's not particularly difficult for us to grab the rig and rotate it the way that we need it to. But you do that tweak, and instantly, you clearly break up the negative space between the arms. It's very subtle there, very minimal, and then quite large over here. So those are the sort of ideas that keep in my head when I'm posing my character. Both, am I breaking up the posing nicely, but also am I breaking up the negative space that the people see, like the background of the character. I think all of that leads us to create things that are a little more interesting. The same is true over here. I think this arm's cool, but it'll be nice if this elbow was kind of leading downwards, and then another hand was overlapping it a little bit, and you start to break up the negative space in between the arms. And then final thing, I would definitely find a way to push this line of action just a little bit more. Say, start this leg a little bit further away and have the head tilted back a little bit more. Tilting the head is such a key little detail to creating a line of action that can add so much to a pose, like the cherry on top. And I would totally tilt the head backwards a little bit more. And then that will tell me that this character is just really singing in the rain and super happy that it's raining. That's the story that I'm creating in my head for this character. Maybe it's not meant to be, but it's the way that I see it. So everything I said just then, I feel like totally applies sorry, I got this one entry that I can't see, to the entry of the character jumping over the couch. It's the same thing. It looks really cool, but a little bit of breakup and symmetry is important for posing, especially for a character with 6 arms. Cool. So this is the last pose we're going to review. And this one was really fun. This is the perfect sort of freeze frame. You can see the lid of the cup, his reaction looking towards it. I can imagine some liquid just starting to fall there. I think all of that is real cool. Maybe some food just starting to fall out of the container there. I love this one. It really tells so much of the story. He's overcommitted but carrying way too many bags, and now he's suffering the consequences of his choices. I think my major critique for this one is he feels a little too balanced, even though he's on one leg. Because we snapped this moment, this mid-action moment where things are falling over, I think it would have been totally justifiable for us to throw this leg, say, a little bit through the back, say on his tiptoe there, and have both legs clearly not underneath the center of gravity, because that tells me that he's essentially lost his weight and he's about to fall over. So if we got this snapshot or this camera shot of the character just about to start falling, I think you want to commit to it. I think having the leg underneath him still tells me that, although he's on one leg, he's still, managing to perfectly balance. And it reads more as his mid step in between walking as opposed to mid starting to fall over. And I think for the story we're trying to tell, I think it'll be fun for him to just be falling over. It'll be a little more interesting. And then the main thing I would change would just be just breaking up some of the posing. All the arms are bent more or less the same. Whereas I think it'd be nice to say bend this one the opposite way almost, kinda almost breaking his elbow, but really clearly telling that he's completely off balance. Maybe the container of food is starting to depart his hand because he's lost control of it. So say that was a container. Maybe he's still got one finger on it, but the others are falling behind. So you're really committing to the idea that he's about to fall over, or that a lot of chaos is about to ensue. I think these limbs are really strong, but this one over here kind of gets lost behind the silhouette of the cup. So maybe you could just push it a little bit further out and have the cup coming back towards us. The lid falling out. Maybe we'll push the bags a little bit higher so we don't get lost behind the silhouette of the bags. But you get the idea. Just having a few arms bent because he's catching onto the bags. But say having the arm of the food and the cup reaching outwards because he's like trying to contain them. I think that would give us a little more, making this show, this posing a little more dynamic, and the moment a little bit more frantic. Maybe if all the arms are bent, it feels a little more contained, like he's in control. If we push, the leg off balance, push a few of the arms reaching outwards, it makes it all feel a little more frantic, and really gives us a sense that, oh fuck, he's about to fall over and he's lost all control. Cool. I think that more or less brings us to the end. I think we're in for just over an hour, but that was real fun.
I think it was closer to an hour and a half. But Rafe, as always, man, amazing feedback. So I'm sure people are really appreciative of your time and the gold nuggets that you sort of delivered during the feedback sessions. Really appreciate it, dude. Honestly, it's hopefully it's helping. Hopefully these people take the feedback away and they can just practice and just take your feedback on, because they're really good demo reel pieces. If they can just lift it that 10%. So thanks so much for coming on again, and we look forward to bringing you back on for another animation contest. Probably a pretty hard one to start off. Ate a spider with friggin' 6 legs. It wasn't the easiest one, but so well done to everybody that jumped into it and embraced it. So did you want to say any final words, Rafe?
No, I think you wrapped it up pretty nicely. Thanks everybody for participating, and it's definitely a challenging one. So don't feel deterred if you find some pieces of it not working as well. Anytime you animate a character with that many limbs, it's going to be challenging regardless. So really solid effort thinking about how they would function, and hopefully you pick up a few little things here and there, polish the shots, get them into a show reel, and we're all laughing.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And, we'll catch up soon. Ciao.
Cool. Thank you.